Hey everyone, I'm Leah Smart, and welcome to In the Arena, a LinkedIn self-development podcast. Our show explores the vulnerable aspects of the human experience to inspire transformation. Hey everybody, I'm so excited to share today's episode with you. And it's because my work is really about one thing. It's how do we live more authentic and meaningful lives while we're here. That might be how you find purpose at work, how you find purpose in life, how you create your own and cultivate your own meaning. And I've been doing this deep work for the last 3 years now. And no matter where I turn, when it comes to being the absolute best version of you, I find it generally requires 3 things. 1 is unplugging from the world. 2 is getting silent. And 3 is intentionally reconnecting with yourself. And there are a ton of ways to do this, right? So you could go for a walk. You could be in nature. You could leave your phone at home for an afternoon. You could write or just rest or read. The list goes on and on. But today I'm focusing on how we can get silent, still, and reconnected through meditation. So I invited the amazing Tamara Levitt onto the show. If you haven't heard of Tamara, she is the head of Mindfulness at Calm, and she's the voice of thousands of meditations on their highly rated app. I told her when we were recording that actually she was the first and has been probably the most consistent guided meditation narrator I've been listening to over the last decade. Now, here's the cool thing. Neither of us have a kind of typical woo-woo background. We've been people who have either stumbled in or met meditation because of a blend of difficult life experiences and a little desire to find and cultivate inner peace. So in this conversation, what we're doing is we're breaking down what meditation really is, how it supports you being that best you, and some common misconceptions. Something I find when I talk to friends or colleagues who aren't into meditation is that they either feel like they have to be, sitting down for an hour, or they can't call themselves meditators, or they can't meditate. We're definitely here to bust that myth. All of Tamara's amazing meditations on the app are 10 minutes. So truly what we're talking about is 10 minutes in the 24 hours that you have in your day to sit down and reconnect. And what I wanted to hear from Tamara, and what I share too, is what the outcomes are of just sitting quietly for even that short a period of time. They can truly be a game changer for how you show up in your day with other people and in your life. And somehow I felt calmer after we talked. I don't know if that's made up or if that was just real, but I love Tamara's voice. So take one big deep breath, settle in, and I hope you enjoy.
Why has meditation become so popular in the last handful of years?
Tamara, thanks so much for joining me in the arena. I am so excited to put the voice to the recorded voice. Mm-hmm. It's great to have you.
It's wonderful to be here. I'm glad we could do this.
Absolutely. What I'd love to do is just get us out of any thoughts that people may or may not have about what meditation is. Like, can we just get those out of the way? And can you share, what is meditation and why does it matter right now?
Yeah, I think that more of us are looking for tools to help us deal with all of this change and uncertainty and stress and anxiety that we're facing, especially in the last couple of years. It's been more profound than ever. So, we're looking for tools to better equip us to deal with this much change. We're not equipped to deal with this much change. And I don't know that we've ever faced this kind of experience before. So, it's impacting us at all levels. And meditation has become much more accessible to people over the last few years. So it's become a really great tool, right? We're all really busy. We can meditate at our own time in our home, whenever it works for us. And I think that's made it a lot easier for people to pick up the practice. To answer your question about who is meditation for and people's preconceptions about meditation, It's something that has become more mainstream in the last few years. And I think that's amazing because people are realizing that meditation is for everyone. You don't need to be religious. You don't need to believe in anything in particular. It's a secular practice that literally anyone could do anywhere, really. You could do it at the bus stop. And I think years ago, there was a real association with religion and meditation, which isn't the case for many types of meditation. I think there are some types of meditation that have religious affiliations, but mindfulness meditation and insight meditation, which is the type of practice that so many of us are learning these days, is really for everyone. It doesn't have anything to do with religion.
And when so, well, maybe just first, what is meditation? How would you describe it to someone who's just trying to get like the simple definition?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'd say meditation is the practice of going within and waking up to what's happening in any given moment. What we're learning to do is deepen our awareness of what's happening from moment to moment to enable us to respond to what's happening in a more skillful way. So, that takes shape in so many different ways, with the practice of meditation. I mean, the formal practice of meditation involves us sitting on our cushion or chair and going inwards and taking some time to pay attention. And we pay attention to our thoughts and our emotions, and we learn to get to know ourselves better. And then we learn how to respond to whatever is coming up in practice. And they're all the same things that come up in our quote unquote real life. We have impatience, we have judgments, we have discomfort, we have physical pain. All of these things give us an opportunity to learn how to work with these things. And so then the second half is going out into the world and learning to actually bring mindfulness into our lives. So it's kind of like a two-part practice.
I love the way you describe that. So it's going inward as part of it, but then it's also the kind of decision and maybe responsibility of saying, okay, now that I know what the inward world, my inner world looks like, I'm going to go out and hopefully behave differently based on what I understand about my inner world. Is that how you'd put it?
I feel like that's part of it, but it's also in moment to moment experience of living and dealing with all of these challenges that surface, us having the capacity to pause and notice what's happening so that we can deal with whatever is happening in real life more skillfully. So, for example, if we're in a situation where we're suddenly feeling a lot of stress in a conversation and we feel some reactivity and maybe some anger, instead of reacting in that moment and saying something that we might regret, we can pause. We can notice what's happening. Maybe our jaw is clenching. Maybe our body is constricting in different ways, or we feel, a pull in our back or tension in our tummy. We have all of these brilliant cues within our body. And then with those cues, we can recognize, okay, now is not the time to say what I'm thinking. I'm going to wait until I can calm down a little bit before I can react and potentially blow this relationship. So what it is it's learning how to develop those skill sets on the cushion so that then when we're in the real world and we're dealing with situations like that, or we're driving and there's, back-to-back traffic and we're feeling road rage surface, or, any kind of experience. I'm sure we'll get to a lot more today. Any kind of challenge that we're facing in life, mindfulness can support us with.
Well, and because you've said mindfulness a few times, I don't know about you, but being in this space, I think all of these words are getting conflated and maybe confusing for people who aren't in this space. What's the difference between mindfulness and meditation? Would that be mindfulness be the application or?
Yeah, actually, I mean, that's the way that I would describe it. I feel like meditation is the formal practice where we're sitting and being open to our experience, whatever that looks like, whether there's racing thoughts or whether the mind is still or whether there's boredom or anything that comes up. We're learning how to respond and work with whatever comes up and create a non-judgmental, compassionate experience. So then we go into our lives, we go into our relationships and our workplace, and we're able to actually apply the practices that we've learned in meditation. And that looks as mindfulness. Mindfulness teaches us that we need to be compassionate to ourselves when we're realizing that we're really critical of ourselves. Mindfulness teaches us that when we're getting swept away by social media, we need to come back. Mindfulness, what it does is it actually wakes us up to whatever's happening so that then we can respond in a more skillful way. Is that a little bit more clear?
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about real life examples, like, you mentioned being in the car on the freeway, and how we react, in the moment versus pausing to respond, and how many times I've seen it and also been, the person who's reacted and had to then go back and clean it up because I reacted in the moment.
Another great example is addiction. Right? When we have an addiction, we're looking to an experience to soothe us or distract us. And when we are not mindful, we just follow the addiction. When we are able to apply mindfulness, we're able to recognize in that moment what's happening, and it helps us make a different choice.
Wow. And, I immediately, when you said addiction, went to thinking about, substance abuse. But I also think for anyone listening, this applies to, of course, to things like, food, alcohol, or substances, but also to social media, to television, and so many other things that maybe are more, societally accepted, but not necessarily meaningful or positively impactful at the scale that we do them right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, social media for sure. Mindfulness helps us to just bring more awareness to what's happening. So as soon as we realize that we've been caught up, it gives us the opportunity to come back. In terms of food, I used to have an eating disorder from the time that I was 14 to about 24. So it was a 10-year period. And it wasn't dieting helped me recover. It wasn't managing my food intake or any of the things that I was actually instructed to use to support my eating disorder. It was mindfulness and deepening in self-compassion so that when I ate, I had bulimia. When I would eat, instead of berating myself and criticizing myself, I would actually apply self-compassion and tenderness. And that helped me realize that it wasn't as big a deal to, eat that cookie or that bag of chips. And I was able to actually let go of all of the anxiety that I had around the act of eating. So yeah, mindfulness can support us in so many ways.
I want to add one more to this because I personally have experienced anxiety for a long time, and I live in New York. So people who live in New York or big city might say, well, duh. But, I also, so maybe situational, but I also experience anxiety anyway. And, in my learning, I was recognizing that's an addiction too.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, the way that we think, this is neuroplasticity, right? The more we think in a certain way, the more that tendency develops. So, neuroplasticity is, the idea that when we have a certain type of thought, it grows stronger. So neurons that fire together, wire together. And if we have a lot of anxious thoughts, those anxious thoughts become a response system to anything that feels stressful. And so they grow. I actually used to have generalized anxiety disorder, so I can relate. And it took me many years. I mean, I still deal with anxiety. I don't know anybody that doesn't have anxiety. But it was really bad for a very long time. And that was partly due to, past trauma in my life. But, at the end of the day, just even having awareness of the thoughts and realizing, okay, I'm falling into negativity and I'm falling into anxiety. And can I catch myself here and maybe try and reframe the experience from a more balanced perspective? That's applying mindfulness, or taking a pause and going and either meditating or just even taking a few long, deep breaths to calm down our nervous system is an amazing way to help anxiety. And, it all starts with awareness. It all starts with mindfulness.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Sometimes it seems like, I'm a huge fan of Marianne Williamson, and I used to go see her at the Marble Collegiate Church in New York every 2 weeks. And she used to always say, you can either learn from joy or from pain. I don't know many people who learn from joy, though. And I would always kind of laugh. But, the way that I found my way to, meditation and to my own, secular spirituality was through a painful experience, like a point that I would say is really low, or was very low. And I'd say, as I was finding my way there, I used a mix of meditation, of, spiritual practices I was learning. I was studying, A Course in Miracles, and started studying Kabbalah, and recognizing there were different ways for me to access mindfulness and also consciousness, and this idea of waking up. And one of the things that I recognized was, at least for myself, for the people that I knew, and for what I understood at the time about, many people in the world, was that we were feeling far away from something that could center us. And we were using all sorts of things outside of us to try and find that center. And so I'm curious, what you've seen. I mean, you've been doing this for so long, maybe like the skipping to the end of what have you seen that people truly, like, if you had to just narrow it down? I know you've been kind of circling it and talking about it, but what have you seen from people who start to access meditation and mindfulness? What's the outcome? Like, why should I do it? Why is my life different?
There's so many different ways to answer that question, because everyone's path is so different, and everyone's outcome of meditating is going to be very different. One of the things that we learn pretty early in practice is that we don't go into meditation for a particular result, because that's actually creating a layer of attachment, which is what we're trying to get rid of. When I remember I went to a 10-day meditation retreat. It was the first retreat that I'd ever done. And I went in with an enormous amount of chronic pain that I'd been holding for years. And after I left, I realized that the pain had subsided significantly. I'd never experienced something like this before. It felt like magic. And when I went back for the second retreat, I'd actually accumulated some different pain. And when I was speaking with the teacher before the retreat started, I mentioned to her that I was really hoping to have a release or at least some relief of the pain that I was carrying. And she said, if that's why you're here, you should leave. And wow. It sounds a little bit harsh, and she didn't mean it that way. She was actually very gentle. But what she was pointing to was that if we're going into practice looking for something very specific, then again, what I mentioned before, what we're doing is we're developing all of these attachments. And it's not through clinging that we have the release. It's actually through letting go. So that was a really amazing lesson for me. And what I've learned is that when I go in to my practice, there are all these outcomes that I would not necessarily have expected. And I see that with many people. I mean, tons of people. I have I hear from our subscribers on a regular basis. I love getting their emails and hearing about all these benefits. I've heard people that share that they've been supported with chronic pain and have had it alleviated. Anxiety and depression is huge. Panic attacks, addiction, relationships is huge. There's so many people that come in and say, my family thanks you. My family is just so happy that I'm meditating, because they're more patient and calm with their kids and their spouses, and they're able to let things go. And, they don't have this same, like really kind of harsh expectations that they might have had, because there's a little bit less judgment. So we see so many different things. There's also health benefits, of course, that people experience. Sleep is massive, and it helps lower blood pressure and all kinds of things. With anxiety, it helps calm our nervous system down. There's so many different outcomes of meditating. And so I always suggest that people go in. It's good to have an idea of why we're going in to meditate. But once we have that once the door is open, we want to just let the practice be what the practice is. And the practice often works in magical ways that we don't necessarily expect or even understand. So yeah, I would really say to new meditators, and even to people who've been meditating for a while, go in without a judgment, because we're trying to actually release our judgments. And I think that's when we actually see the best results.
I love the idea of going in without expectations. I do a mix. Sometimes I'm doing visualizations, which are a little bit different, but a lot of times I'm meditating, and I use the Calm app, which I love. Mm-hmm. And I would say I notice, I try to explain it in this way, that I notice I'm more aware of my reactions before I behave in accordance with the thought that I'm having. So, I think they say that this is like the refractory period for the brain, but I try to describe this as like the experience, the more you meditate, your first day of meditation, maybe you sit on the pillow, and it's sort of like your ability to respond instead of react is sort of like throwing a boomerang out into the wild, and it comes back in a day. And then, as you continue to meditate, the boomerang starts coming back faster and faster. So your ability to sort of bounce back, to recognize and then potentially bounce back from challenges that you're having or from thoughts that you experience shifts so massively. And you can't quite pinpoint the shift. I don't even know if you kind of align with that, but I can't remember the day, right, that something changed. Yeah. I can only recall how I was and how I am now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the development of non-reactivity is such a significant part of meditation. And it's, for me, one of the things that I'm most grateful for about my practice. Again, having come from trauma, my instinct is to be reactive, because I've had to protect myself for so much of my life. And so meditation has been really helpful for me in my relationships and in my general, overall sense of well-being and happiness. But I remember actually going back to that first retreat that I did. I went for a walk with a friend the day after, and we went into a store, and I realized that I didn't have my wallet when I went to pay for something. And I said, oh, well, I guess I'll just, look for it when we get home. And my friend was really surprised that I didn't freak out, because normally if I didn't have my wallet, my response would be, oh my God, I have to go home. I hope I haven't lost it. And go into the whole spiral around, oh my God, I hope I don't have to go and get a new driver's license and all that. I was just so super calm about it. And I wasn't jumping to any conclusions, and I wasn't making it into a big deal. And that was actually the first thing that anybody noticed after my retreat. And I actually didn't really even feel the impact of it until I got that external feedback. So it's a really interesting thing, because when you're in the practice and you're changing, it's kind of like aging, right? You don't really notice yourself aging the way other people do that haven't seen you for 5 years. So it's sometimes other people that notice the changes.
Mm. When you're in that moment of, and I'm trying to make sure we get really, clear on what some of these phrases mean, what it's like to experience them. So when you're in that moment that most of us would freak out, can't find my wallet. Oh my God, have to go home. Has it fallen somewhere? Has someone taken it and is now like buying things on, West Elm because they've got my credit card? When you're in that moment and you're saying, oh, well, I'll look for it. What's going on for you that's different than what would have been going on? And maybe I'll add in, what are you understanding that's different than maybe what you understood before?
I mean, I can tell you what's happening internally. Internally, my body and my mind are more calm. And that's really what allows us to respond to things non-reactively. Because when we have a greater calm in our body and mind, there's this space around our experience so that it doesn't cause us to jump. There's actually a great analogy. I might jumble this up because I haven't told it in a couple of years at least. But if you imagine a river, like a really rapid river, and someone is on a boat in the river, they're going to be, flung up and down with the waves, and it's going to be a really rocky experience, right? So what mindfulness is it's actually helping us to step out of the boat and onto the shoreline, so that rather than getting caught up in all of the waves, we're actually able to have the space so that we can see what's going on, but not get caught up in it.
Oh, I love that visual. Out of the boat and onto the shoreline.
Yeah.
Got it. And so, I mean, and I'm going to add in one more phrase here, Tamara, and I'm curious to get your perspective on this one. So, we've talked about meditation, mindfulness, I mentioned consciousness. The other term that floats around, and I think less often in the corporate space, but it's floats around anyway, because it's a very real part of who we are, but it's spirituality. And I'm curious, does spirituality matter? And when I say spirituality, I mean secular spirituality, just connection to self, to the world. Does it matter? And what role does meditation play in supporting that development?
Yeah. So I like the way that you referred to spirituality as connection, because I think, to be honest, I kind of have gotten lost in the word. I sometimes, I don't even know what it means anymore.
I know.
So many people use it in so many different contexts. I used to use it a lot, 20 years ago. And now I don't really use it that often. I do like the word connection. Mindfulness and meditation offers us an opportunity to come home to ourselves. Right. And we learn who we are. We learn everything about ourselves that we wouldn't normally learn, right? Like when we're in school, we're not learning how to get to know ourselves. We're not learning how to develop self-compassion and gentleness and how to find resilience and stability. Like, to me, these are all the things that really matter in life. And so connecting with ourselves in this way that we do through mindfulness, it really helps us learn how to get to know ourselves and how to find stability in this unstable world. Once we understand ourselves, we're able to learn how to work with our emotions and our triggers. And so unless we know how to work with those things ourselves, then we're going into the world it's like we're going into the world unprepared. It would be like if you don't know how to speak French and you go to France, it's going to be more difficult, right? I mean, that's kind of a silly example. But if we don't know how to communicate mindfully, if we don't know how to self-soothe ourselves when we have anxiety, if we don't know all of these things that we learn in practice, then how do we exist in a way that we're really taking care of our mental and emotional health and also supporting other people in the world? Because the only way that we can really support other people is if we're supporting ourselves, right? It all starts with ourselves.
I love that you said that, because the vision of this podcast is that better humans create better work, which creates then a better world. And, with so many people spending so much time at work, right, and so much time in their communities and in their world, it seems we still have a little bit of a ways to go with spending time with ourselves. And like you said, coming home to ourselves. And I love that you highlight that, it doesn't have to be spirituality that uses a word. It can just be connection to self, connection to others. But that without that, it's kind of like what you're saying is my reactivity and conditioning is just going out into the world, bumping up against everyone else's reactivity and conditioning.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And I want to, you've called out judgment a few times, and I'm sure even for you, I'd love to hear this. Even for people who regularly meditate, it's really easy to fall off track. You can easily stop meditating for a period of time and then, judge yourself for not doing that. Or, in my own experience, I found earlier this year trying to meditate, I'd sit on the pillow and my mind would be racing so much. And I'd be so full of it was like my body was, all it wanted to do was jump off that pillow and go do stuff. And so I would get up and I wouldn't meditate because I just kept thinking in my mind, like, I just can't do it. And it's only the last few weeks that I've felt very calm and being able to do it. But can you just talk a little bit about like that experience of, the kind of coming in and out of this practice and of the role self-compassion plays in that judgment?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, first of all, I have something to share about your experience. You're human. And so we all have periods where it's difficult to meditate. When I first started, I was practicing very regularly. I mean, for years and years, I practiced every day. For periods, I practiced for 2 hours a day. I was, really, really intense about it. And now I don't practice every day, and some people could call me a bad meditator, but I feel quite comfortable with the fact that I meditate as often as I can. But if I miss a day, it's not a big deal. I think that one of the biggest things that people need to understand about this practice is that even though discipline is really important, right? Like it's a practice like anything else. So in order for us to really make a difference, we do need to do it regularly, especially when, we're fighting our core beliefs and the habits that we've had for a lifetime. So practicing every day empowers us so that when we go into the world, we have mindfulness at our fingertips. But at the same time, self-compassion, we talked about self-compassion. It's a really big part of working with ourselves in our lives and non-judgment. So if we have critical feelings like I'm a failure for missing a few days, or, why bother doing this if I can't do it every day, that's when we stop. And so we don't want to get to that point. We want to be soft. In addition to being disciplined, we want to be forgiving. So I think that's actually the most important thing that I would say to anybody who falls off track. And then I would add a few tips. You could try switching up the time you meditate. That could be helpful, or the place. One of the things that I really love is getting a meditation buddy. Not everybody has access to meditation centers, which are really supportive. So at least having a meditation buddy where you call each other up or text each other and say, hey, I'm meditating now, and you're kind of accountable to each other, that can be really helpful. But, at the end of the day, we're human. And we're going to get busy, and things are going to take us away from our practice. And then we come back, and our practice is always here for us.
That last point is huge. The practice is always there for you. I remember a point, earlier this year after I'd gone through this process of going, I just can't sit down and meditate, that I felt like I had points of wondering, will I ever sit down to meditate again? Because I keep, quote unquote, messing this up. And so, I really appreciate you sharing, we're human and the discipline is important, but at the same time, our ability to, I think really what brought me back is, once you do start meditating regularly and you see the change and then you stop for a while, you see that change too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's what's kept me coming back these,
Right.
25 years for sure.
Exactly. So I'm curious, Tamara, as people are listening to this and thinking about the impact of meditation, like it could sound like a silly question, but I'm curious what you think. If everybody at work in our workplaces were a regular, and whatever that means for them, regular meditator, what do you think would be different?
I mean, a few things. One, we'd like each other a lot more. We'd see that, again, coming back to stress and reactivity, people, there's so many different personality types at work, right? We're definitely going to encounter people that we don't get along with as well. And there's going to be conflict. So if someone sends us an email that upsets us, rather than hitting reply and sending one back that's going to escalate the conflict, we can pause and we can save that relationship, right? If we just wait until we've calmed down, we can respond in a way that is going to soften the situation. Or we can just communicate in a more effective way. Because when we communicate out of anger, that usually leads to problems. Also, we learn how to listen better with mindfulness. So rather than, trying to get in what we need to get into a conversation because we feel protective, we can actually feel calm enough to listen first. And then when people feel heard, they're more receptive to us when it's our turn to speak. I think that there's so many other things that come up with work. There's perfectionism, there's self-doubt. And so again, coming back to compassion and kindness rather than criticism are really helpful. We want to be able to take risks, right? I mean, part of why Calm has been so successful is because we have taken massive risks. Not every single feature we've tried has been a big success. I would say most of them have been, like the big ones, but there's some small things we've done that haven't really taken off. But we just look at them as learning opportunities and we don't regard them as failures. We view them as having tried something, which is amazing. And that's really, it's the way we respond to a situation that is really important. It's not the situation itself. It's not the failure. It's the way we respond to the failure that matters. So those are a few of the things that come to mind. The last thing is just anxiety is something that surfaces a lot at work. We have presentations and it's really easy to get overwhelmed and anxious before a big meeting or a big presentation. And so using the tools of mindfulness can be incredibly supportive. Meditating like for a few minutes, just closing your eyes and breathing before you have to speak goes a massive way and can alleviate anxiety.
Yeah. And I mean, what you're kind of alluding to is like, there are all these elements of being human that show up with us at work that we often aren't skilled or taught or experienced at working with. And so meditation is one tool or strategy to work with the fact that we are all emotional beings who also happen to think and then happen to have jobs versus, being thinking beings who show up to work and can turn off our experiences of emotion, which guide a lot of the challenges we have.
Yeah. I mean, the workplace, it's just another opportunity to apply our mindfulness practice, right? Mm-hmm. Every single encounter we have in life, every single circumstance we have in life allows us to put our practice into use.
I love that. All right. So Tamara, I'm going to have you answer our 3 big questions. So the vision of this show is better humans, better work, better world. So I would love for you to complete each of the statements as you see fit. So better humans are
compassionate.
Better work is
balanced.
And a better world has
more connection.
Love it. Thank you so much for being here. I don't know if it was just going back into my Calm app mode, but I felt calm having this conversation. So thanks for bringing the calm to In the Arena.
You're so welcome. It was a pleasure.
Our show is hosted by me, Leah Smart, and is produced by the amazing LinkedIn media production team. Gratitude to Dan Mills, Nicole Roach, Andy Ta, Katya Kostakova, and Lamia Bowden. Dan Lujan is the mastermind behind the scenes. Chris Eldridge did our cover art, and our music is from the ever-growing collection of APM Music. If you like our show, go on Apple Podcasts to subscribe and rate us. And if the spirit moves you, leave a review. It helps our work get out to more people like you who benefit from it. And if you want to stay in touch, subscribe to our newsletter. It's on LinkedIn, and it's called In the Arena. And lastly, you can feel free to email me at inthearena@linkedin.com. Thanks for coming on the journey with me, and I'll see you next time.